Hello, this is Mrs. Moore's video lecture on nationalism and independence in the countries of India and Vietnam. Today we are looking at the standard SS7H3, Section A, which says describe how nationalism led to independence in India and Vietnam. Let me show you a guide to help you complete your organizer. The topics that you should be looking to complete with this video lecture and the handouts used in class, which I have also put on my blog. Colonial rule. Who ruled these countries of India and Vietnam? When? How were the people treated during foreign rule? Nationalism. What is it? What did it have to do with India or Vietnam? Protests. What did Indians do to get independence? How did they go about it? People. Who was involved in the nationalist movement? What did they do? Groups. What organizations were involved in the nationalist movement? What did they do? How did they help? Events. What events happened in India as they were trying to gain independence? These would be specific events, battles, miscellaneous, anything that didn't fit in the other topics. And at the bottom, independence. When did these countries gain independence from their European colonial powers? What happened when the nationalist movement succeeded? So with that, let's get started. You can see on the screen, this is a world map showing European colonialism during the period of 1500 to 2000. You can see that the British Empire was very widespread. They controlled a lot of territory, not only in Africa, where we just finished studying, but also here in Asia, in the countries of India and in Southeastern Asia as well. This is just an up-close slide of the colonial powers, again, that control territory not only in Africa, but in Asia as well. Nationalism. Nationalism is the belief that people should be loyal to and unite with those with whom they share a common culture and land. The outcome leads to independence from colonial rulers. This map shows circled the country of India, which was a part of the British Empire. As you can see, there were many other territories that Great Britain controlled. India was ruled by the British since 1613. It was the most populated and most valuable colony of the British Empire because India had many natural resources, spices, and things that, of course, the British wanted access to. India was known as the jewel in the British crown. This is a political cartoon showing here the British Prime Minister making Queen Victoria Empress of India. Some Indians went along with the British rule, others did not. The Indian people were not treated as equals. They were treated as second-class citizens in their own country. Here you can see a picture of a Battle of Arcot, where many of the British soldiers were fighting an Indian army of 10,000. It says the Indians had many pieces of artillery and their attack was led by armored elephants. However, the encounter lasted only an hour, and at the end of that time, the Indian army was in retreat. There was a very important person in this nationalist independence movement. His name was Mohandas Gandhi. Gandhi was born in India in 1869. He was eventually assassinated in India in 1948. By trade, he was a lawyer. He had moved to South Africa to help fight against apartheid, which we talked about with our study of Africa. He eventually moves back to India in 1915 to help gain freedom for the Indian people from the British rule. He had several different nicknames. One was Mahatma, which means great soul, another Bapu, which means father. Gandhi was very important in this independence movement. He used the tactic of nonviolent protests to try to bring change without using violence. A couple of other terms to describe this nonviolent protest was passive resistance and the term civil disobedience. It was thought that Gandhi inspired many other civil rights leaders around the world, Nelson Mandela in Africa that we're familiar with, and of course the one that we're probably most familiar with is Martin Luther King Jr. here in the United States, who led the civil rights movements in our own country. Gandhi's goal was to show the injustice of the British rule in India. Again, his plan was called civil disobedience, which is the nonviolent refusal to obey an unfair law. Examples of Indian nonviolent protests included boycotting British-made goods, refusing to attend second-class schools, and refusing to pay unfair taxes. All of these protests began to hurt the British economy, which depended on Indian resources. Though the British often responded to Indian protests with arrests and beatings, Gandhi and his followers refused to do the same. The world watched as the British Empire was not able to stop the protests and Indian refusal to obey laws. Let's take a look at Vietnam. Vietnam was the colony of the French since 1887. French Indochina was the territory that France controlled, known as Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. The Vietnamese nationalist leader was Ho Chi Minh, and Ho Chi Minh felt like that the best way for him to fight the French for independence was to turn to the Communist Party for help in this independence movement. The Viet Minh was a group or the league that was fighting for independence of Vietnam from the French. The first French Indochina War lasted from 1946 to 1954. These are pictures of Ho Chi Minh. The bottom picture is Ho Chi Minh visiting with Mao Zedong, who was the great communist leader of China during this time. The Geneva Conference took place in 1954. As a result of the Geneva Conference, the United States used their power to have Vietnam temporarily split into two countries, North Vietnam, which was controlled by the communists, and South Vietnam, controlled or backed by the United States. The United States' plan was to stabilize Vietnam and then let the people vote on what sort of government they wanted. The United States hoped to find someone they could put up as a democratic alternative to Ho Chi Minh in the elections of 1956, so that the country could be united, but as a democratic country rather than a communist country. The Geneva Conference began the United States' long involvement in the politics of Vietnam and ultimately led to the Vietnam War. Here you can see where they divided Vietnam after the Geneva Conference, splitting the country into two separate sections at the 17th parallel, with the northern part of Vietnam being controlled by the communists and the southern part of Vietnam being controlled or backed by the United States. The Southern Resistance. The Viet Cong was a group that showed resistance, was a resistance movement in South Vietnam that was to unite the South with the Communist North. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was a famous trail used to supply the Viet Cong with resources. The Mekong River was an important part of this transportation of resources used to fight against the democratic government in the South. With the national elections in 1956 to select a new leader and unite Vietnam, the South Vietnam's leader refuses to hold those elections, saying that South Vietnam never signed the Geneva Accords and tries to crush communism. This caused the split between North and the South, starting the Vietnam War, which was considered the Second Indochina War. The northern and southern zones were to be reunited after the elections. However, that didn't take place. Feelings of nationalism were more important than ideas about what political systems they should have. Due to years of violent fighting and the loss of thousands of lives, the United States finally decided to withdraw their troops in April of 1975. The very next day, North Vietnam took over the South and united the country into the Republic of Vietnam. While the new country was communist, some of the other countries in the region did not follow suit. This concludes my lecture on independence movements in nationalism and independence. Please use this video lecture along with the reading information used in class to help you complete your organizer. Thank you.